Hi everyone, so I'm back with another word from Father, and He gave it to me. It started last night, well, early this morning, I should say, around 1 o- 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday morning. And sorry about the noise, my puppy drinks his water pretty loud, as you can see. Anyway, so I know I told you about the two incidences that I've had at work where God has sent people to stay with me during times where the enemy had sent his attacks, and they did not come to fruition. And last night, um, suddenly, in front of my store where I work, there was two police officers shining their lights right into my store, and it caught my attention because it got so bright. So I went to the window and I noticed that there was a car that they had pulled over, and the car had pulled over into a parking space in front of the store. So there was a car, and I always get suspicious of vehicles who park in reverse in front of the store. And the first time it happened, Father gave me the words, "fast getaway." And I was like, what? And so now, whenever I see a car parked in reverse, I think fast getaway. Well, what does a person have to do to need a fast getaway? You know, if we think of all the bank robber movies or all the movies where there's robberies, there's always a driver, and then there's the man who pulls off the robbery. And so I've been praying, like I said, you know, I pray when I get to work, which is on one day, and then I pray as I'm working throughout the night, and it goes into the next day. So, you know, so I'm always praying over the store 24/7. And I had been praying for God to send his protection, to send his angels to stand guard. And as we all know, God listens to our prayers, but it takes time for us to come into alignment, for it to be God's timing. And I don't know if I mentioned it in my last video, not the last video, but the videos before that, where there was an uptick of police activity in the area where I am at. And God did say there was a new sheriff in town, remember? So that was another video that I did. And this goes into the revelation and the testimony. So God has been telling us that He will be sending helpers, that He will be sending protection details. And we never know how it's going to work. We don't know how God's going to deliver. We don't know how God's going to come to fruition in His words, because His plans aren't our plans. His ways aren't our ways. And because of these two attempts by the enemy, and they weren't just to rob me. The intent of the if you feel in the spirit, you'll understand. But the emotion behind it was destruction, was to destroy me. So because of my stance in God, the way I'm doing, the way He's having me stand, the enemy wants to end me, because the area that I'm in is a stronghold for him. And once I enter the areas where he is infested in, is the way God made he showed me like an infestation of mice, rodents, spiders, scorpions. And when you have an infestation, you got to send in the pest eliminator. So in the real world, we call Terminex, we call, pest control, we call someone who is an expert in that situation. And God knows that I will enter anywhere. I won't back down. I will go into the slums. I will go into the, the places that most of his children would have a hesitation. Not because I'm better than anyone else or I have this, higher than, mightier than thou kind of attitude, but it's because I'm willing to allow God to use me in any way he sees fit. And a lot of times that means that my life is in peril. And it's okay for me because the way I see it, if I die, I'm going with Father. So I win either way because I know as long as Father needs me to continue doing his work, he's not going to let anything happen to me. And I am so strong in that attitude, so strong in that faith, so strong in that belief that the enemy does not rattle me anymore. Those 5 weeks that I spent in my car with no food, no money, no mode of transportation, it took all the fear away. That's why God used it, because he realized, he knew that on the other side of that situation, I would be fearless and I would confront every situation and I would stand firm and I wouldn't run. I mean, yeah, some of the other people that I work with, when, because I'm not one to keep the information secret. I like sharing so people are informed because knowledge is power. And God would tell me, share your experience, share what's going on, share what you've heard, share what you see. And so I've been sharing it so that everyone can be cognizant of the area around them. People walk through their lives like blinders on. They have no idea what's around them. They don't have any idea of the evil that they're always surrounded by. So God has me share with everyone my experiences. And because of the experiences that I have, a lot of people don't like me because when I'm speaking to them, they think I'm boasting. They think that I think I'm better than anybody else, that I think that, I am holier than thou. And it's not that. It's that my strength in God is so deep that nothing the enemy can bring at me will rattle me. Nothing. Because the enemy, and those of us chosen ones, the ones that are going out, the forerunners, the peacemakers, the land surveyors. And it's funny because I had no idea God was going to have me go through all of these terms, but the land surveyors are the ones that go before. They see the land, they understand the spirits that are over that land. And basically, those are the sentries. They're the ones that are going out and they're doing the what do you call it? The not the surveying, but they're giving surveillance. They're monitoring, and then they report back to God, and then they go on to their other assignment, the next level of their assignment, and God sends the forerunners, and these are your special teams, And it's funny the way Father brought it to me, because I was just about to watch Top Gun because Father led me to. It's one of my favorite movies, and I've watched that movie in the last 4 months probably a dozen times. And each time, Father had given me a different revelation from that particular movie. He gave me a dream, which he hasn't led me to share my dreams very much, but suddenly he said, remember that dream I gave you about the head of the class? I'm like, yeah, I do. So he has different battalions of warriors that he will send out at different times. So the next group that he sends after the land surveyors is the elite forces. He sends out the ground troops, the ones they go in tactfully, and they basically they infiltrate the enemy camps. And these are the prayer warriors, the fighters that they go against the curses. These are your curse breakers. These are your generational bloodline defeaters. And so the way God brought it to me was just like in Top Gun, where the Navy created this elite group of fighters who were not just top of their of the top of the highest skilled fighter pilots, but these were fighter pilots that could ad hoc their own fight plans, their own fighting so in other words, they could be in a fight, and they were so well trained and so skilled in their ability to fly that aircraft that they would in an instant change their trajectory of how they're attacking the enemy. So, if any of you have seen Top Gun, you know that Tom Cruise is like the elite of the elite. And he is just like, because when he's in that cockpit, when he's in that plane, head to head with the enemy, it's almost like God takes over in that moment, because those elite forces have become so merged with Father that, and they've taken Galatians 2:20 to heart. Like they've made it they've almost like tattooed it on their hearts, and if you don't know Galatians 2:20, then this channel is not for you, because this is for mature children of God. These are for the women and men who have eyes to see, ears to hear, and understand in the spirit. And it's like a badge of honor that we wear. And so when we're in the trenches, we're not seeing what is in the natural per se. We are sensing in the spirit, and we can sense the spirit that is on that individual, that is hiding behind that person. In the previous video, I had said that there was a lot of jealousy in the store that I'm in, but it's not just jealousy. I have seen so many recovering drug addicts. So there is the gluttony is another spirit that is in this area. There is the spirit of Jezebel, but it's not. When we start to get deeper into the levels of the spirits, they get stronger, because we stopped fighting against the minions of these spirits. We're now into their commanders, their sergeants. So we're fighting in levels. We're increasing. As we increase, we stop fighting the lower levels, and we go into the next level, which is the next level of spirits. So the warring is bigger, the the enemy sending out his minions gets more frequent. And they're tactful just like we are. They plan out, they watch, you know, to commit a robbery, you have to plan it. It's not just a run in, grab and go. The first time that I was about to be robbed, that's how it was. There was these low level puppets, as God calls them, puppets that don't really think for themselves. They have to be constantly pushed in their heads to do the bidding that the enemy wants them to do. And so he sent these minions out, and they didn't really have a plan. They just ran in the store, and so they're in the moment, they're like looking at each other like, what do we do now? Because there's somebody here. We didn't plan for that. So that's when the enemy realized, I got to send somebody who has a little bit more, finesse, who can see a situation and, deliver results. So those two went back to their lair, and here comes another group or another set of individuals that were sent to take care of me. And they had a little bit better planning. But again, God goes before us, and the enemy will not prosper. So because now I've passed these two lower levels of the enemy was now ready to send his commanders. These are the individuals that are hardcore. Now, if we think of it as a gang members, you have your level entry, the ones that are new to the gang. They're hyped up, they're young, they're not really thinking about what they're doing, or not really, because they're so innocent in their path at that point, that they don't understand the consequences of their actions until they do something and get caught and have spent time in prison, or have spent time going in and out of jail, have gotten caught, in different things. For them, it's all about the life. It's all about the gang, the family gang. And then you have your next level, which is these guys have been in for a little while. They have a little bit of a rap sheet, but they're still not the leaders. Then you have your next level. These are the hardcore guys. These are the guys that do the drive-by shootings, and they don't just do it in a way that will get them caught. They will use double-plated vehicles, meaning that it's a fake plate. They'll use, guns that don't have serial numbers. They'll stalk you. So, and this is where I'm now coming full circle with you, is that with these two first attempts, the enemy was pissed because they weren't able to successfully do what the enemy wanted to do. And last night, or early this morning, another vehicle had pulled in and had parked in reverse. And right when the person came in, it's so odd because they always ask to use the bathroom, and I'm like, okay. So the man walks in, goes into the bathroom. He's in there for a little too long. Now, I don't sit there and monitor how long people go to the bathroom, but men typically don't take that long, because most of the time they're just going in to urinate. And this man was in there for probably a good 20 minutes. And that's when the police showed up. When he came out of the store, he just about pooped his pants. And I could tell because he was like, and he very rushedly walked to the door to get into his car to drive away because they were parked in reverse. So they didn't want any interactions with the police officers. So here's where my revelation came in. I had been praying for God to send his guardians, his protection, his because the enemy was coming against me. And obviously, if he's coming against me this harsh in the real, in the spirit, it was even worse. Like, there were days where I would come out of work so tired because I was constantly having to pray, constantly having to pray, constantly having to pray. Because I felt, before these individuals came into the store, I felt the spirit that was coming against me. And so I would pray. And because of the prayers, you know, because I aligned myself with God and his protection, he took care of things without me having to do anything. Because I always leave it in his hands. And so last night, when these police officers showed up, they had pulled over a car, and they ended up arresting the passenger of the car, and then they left, and one police officer stayed behind, and he walks into my store, and he says, you know, good morning, because it's 2:30, 2:45, somewhere around there. And I said, good morning. And he's looking around, and I could tell he was looking for coffee. And I was just about to dump the coffee, but God's like, you know what? Slow down. You don't need to dump it all right now. Because usually by 2 o'clock in the morning, all my coffee pots are empty. They're getting ready for, they're getting cleaned out and washed up for the next day or for the next shift, which usually doesn't start till about 5 o'clock. So I don't set up the coffee to be started until 4:30, which is about when people start coming into the store for their going to work and things like that, the early morning folks. And he was looking around, and I was like, you looking for coffee? And he said, yeah, I'm looking for coffee. And I said, well, I haven't poured them all out. I said, I have one left, and it's Brazilian because it's a flavor of coffee. And he goes, that's perfect. And I said, well, help yourself. It's right here. And I said, you know what? Coffee's on me. And then he goes and tells me that there is a vehicle that is going around to the different establishments and robbing them between the hours of 1 and 3. And God, the little light bulb went off. And I prayed right in that minute. And, he gave me a description of the vehicle, and I said, I'll keep my eyes peeled and make sure that, I'm aware. And I said, because I'm here by myself from 10 p.m. at night to 6 a.m. in the morning. I'm by myself. There's no one else here. So right there, because I shared that information, the police officer started thinking, okay, so this is one of the areas that they're going to try and hit. And I did tell him that I had already had 2 instances that, thank God, didn't turn into anything. So he now says, okay, so she's had 2 instances where they've tried to rob her or they tried to do something, but it didn't turn into anything. And as he was walking out the door, he said, God bless you. And I looked at him and I said, and God bless you. And he says, stay safe. And I said, I will. And I think the reason that he came into the store is because when they had that car pulled over, God sent me out, because I'm supposed to go out and clean the parking lot and the gas station area for the morning. So we're not supposed to, I'm supposed to do like a quick inspection to make sure there's no trash and stuff. I don't have to take out the trash or anything like that. I just have to take out or pick up the big pieces of trash that are in the parking lot, in front of the store, and around the different pumps. And God, when these police officers were there with that car, God said, go out right now and do your parking lot check. This is the safest you will ever be. And I was like, heck yeah. So I grabbed my dustpan, grabbed my broom, and I was obedient. Because I was obedient, this police officer was sent in. Because he was sent in, I then was told to share my experiences. And then, as he walked out the door, I thought he had left. And I remembered about the switchblade that I had found in between the bottle that was broken. And God said, you should have shared with him the switchblade. And I'm like, shoot, I forgot. Okay. And then he said, God says, look outside. And I see he's still in the parking lot. This is half an hour after the whole situation had been resolved with the car that they had pulled over. And this is after the fact that he shared with me the description of the vehicle, and that, over the last week, all these establishments, had been 4 establishments had been robbed. And he said, just be cognizant of what's around you. And I was like, okay. So then, because God was leading me to share about the switchblade, I went and I grabbed it. Now, my boss had left it in the glove that I had put it in. Okay, the spot where he was parked was dark. You couldn't see. The letters on the white piece of paper were tiny and barely, you had to have a flashlight to see it. Okay? From his angle, he wasn't even looking directly at the glove. And he looks at me and he says, because I was explaining to him how I found it and blah, blah, blah. And then he goes, is that a license plate? And it caught me off guard. I'm like, how did he see the license plate? Like, in my mind, right? I'm thinking, how did he see the license plate? I can barely see the license plate. And it's facing me. And I said, yes, it is. And so I read it to him and he typed it in. And as I was telling him the story about, the reason why why I kept the switchblade, why I wrote down the license plate, is because, again, the guy took 15 minutes in the bathroom. There was a young kid. And then he came out and spent another 10 minutes in his car. And then somebody tells me that there was a broken bottle. And in between that bottle is this switchblade. And I said, so I kept it. I wrote down his license plate because, I don't know, just something didn't sit right with me. And the police officer's just looking at me like, where did you come from? Like, how are you this capable? How are you this aware? And that's God's children. We're always aware. We're always paying attention to what's around us. Because we always have to be aware of where the enemy is and what the enemy is trying to do. And you should always be, sensing in the spirit. And when you start to feel that friction, that oppression, the enemy is bringing you an attack in the physical. Because, the enemy thinks that if they come fast, that they'll be able to get one over on God. But please, God will run circles around the enemy. Then sometimes he'll be like pedaling backwards and he's like, dude, you're still not fast enough. Anyway, so finally, as I'm talking, without even realizing that he's speaking out loud, the police officer says, that's interesting. And I thought he was talking about what I was saying. I was like, oh, okay. Turns out he was talking about the license plate that I gave him. And he goes, there's no address attached to this license plate. That's odd. Well, the reason that he said that was odd is because every license plate has, even if it's an old address, okay, there's an address that's attached to the license plate, because when the DMV assigns the license plate, they use your home address and they verify it by, a, a bill, or you have to have something that you receive in the mail that shows your address, or you have to update your address in the system. That's why you get that 7 days or 10 days, depending on the state that you're in, that to update your address. And so he thought it was curious, and God said, let it go. I was like, okay. And so he told me, they're not going to do anything with the switchblade, because you basically found it on the street. And I was like, okay, so I'll just leave it for my manager. When I said that, God said, okay, let it go. Now come back inside and put it away. So basically, God is letting him know that it's going to be in safekeeping in the store for a later date, because that switchblade will become evidence in a case. I don't know what case. I just know that from what I've seen, God lead me the way he leads me. Everything he has me touch has significance. There is a reason that he had me keep the switchblade, because the man that was with me when I found the switchblade, he asked me, he goes, can I keep it? I'm like, no, you can't keep it. And God told me, you give it to him, he's going to use it on you. And I was like, he goes, not right now, but he will in the future. I was like, no, you can't have it. So I know somewhere along the line, that switchblade is going to become important. I don't know when, and I don't know how, and I don't know who is going to come looking for it. I don't know. But, so I said, okay, I'll leave it for my manager. And, then he was gone. As soon as I walked inside, I turned around, he was gone. And God said, well, he was waiting for you to bring him the switchblade. I was like, wow. And Father gave me peace. He says, from now on, you don't have to worry. They're going to be watching your back, because now they know that you're alone. Now they know that this is a potential a place for the robbers to come and attack. And I said, okay, so they're going to be lying in wait. They could be coming in as regular people. They could be, putting cars out in the parking lot, or not in the parking lot, but cars over, because across the street there is like a parking